I'm going to spoilers if you haven't watched this movie. It may not even be the right title. But so he ends up back in his own body playing at the jazz club that he's always wanted to play at. And then once he's achieved this thing that he's dreamed about his whole life, he says to one of the other musicians what happens next. And the musician says something like, we come back and do it again tomorrow night. And I found that so profound because I was like, yeah, the thing that you hold out for, once you've reached it, life still goes on and you still have to keep going. It's not a static point. You don't get the credits and the fade out. You still live for the rest of your life. So yes, you've achieved that thing, but then you still have to keep achieving and keep being interested in what happens next.
Welcome to the Funny in Failure podcast, a podcast that celebrates failure and shines the light on the emotional side of comedy, with yours truly, Michael Kahan.
Wowie. Today's guest is fantastic, kind, loving, funny, and with a genuine care for humans. You can see why Cal's been thriving in the industry for so long. I love her. I love that we did this in person and appreciate Cal raising the quality of this podcast with her beautiful insights and compassion. I also love her comedic style that is all about empowering the audience, which is pretty cool. Cal also has some shows coming out soon, so check her out, particularly if you're in the Melbourne area for the Melbourne International Comedy Festival. The links are in the episode notes, and they should be amazing. So let's get into it and officially introduce Cal to the podcast. Cal Wilson is a stand-up comedian, writer, actor, author, and TV and radio host. She moved from New Zealand to Australian shores in 2003 and has gone on to become one of Australia's most popular comedians. She's also a favourite on television shows such as ABC's Spicks and Specks and Good News Week, as well as Thank God You're Here, Hughesy, We Have a Problem, Have You Been Paying Attention, Skithouse, Rove Live, The Glasshouse, and the 2002 premiere series of Would I Lie to You. Amongst taking our screens and stages by storm, Cal landed a dream job of hers, an ensemble cast member in Whose Line Is It Anyway, Australia, alongside some of the country's brightest improvisers. In 2018, she was invited by Netflix to the Montreal Just for Laughs Comedy Festival to record a Netflix original comedy special, which was released globally in 2019. The same year, Cal became a very serious children's author, penning 2 books called George and the Great Bum Stampede and George and the Great Brain Swappery. She's also the Melbourne live show host of the world smash hit storytelling podcast, The Moth, and she'll also be joining the mammoth comedy podcast, The Guilty Feminist, on tour around her native country in New Zealand. Despite an aversion to the great outdoors, Cal bravely joined the cast of I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here in 2022. Also, Cal has just been announced as the brand new host of the Great Australian Bake Off, which will air on Foxtel in 2023. So as you can imagine, we dive deep and we cover a lot, such as Cal's daily Reddit routine, her obsession with cats, improv and stand-up comedy, collaboration, her unique philosophy and mindset, supporting others, perseverance, and resilience. Before we get into this chat, in case you aren't aware, the videos are now available on YouTube under Michael Kahan. That's Kahan with a K, unless you're listening to it already. I find it adds a new element and dynamic to these chats. I'll still be posting snippets of these chats on Instagram under Funny and Failure, so check them out if you want to stay in the loop for upcoming episodes, or you want to ask a guest a question. I'd also love it if you would share the podcast or share your takeaways from the chat. It really motivates me, helps the podcast grow, and ensures I can lock in amazing guests like this one. And just as a final reminder, the podcast comes out every Monday at 5 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, with the video to follow the following day. Anyway, sit back, relax, and enjoy today's epic episode.
Cool.
But I have to hear about your morning routine, about going on Reddit, and am I an arsehole? I've never heard about that before.
So so this is how I think I heard about Reddit. I was on Twitter and someone retweeted a great Ask Reddit about what's the creepiest thing your child has ever done. And it was just fantastic, you know, like little kids in cars pointing at cemeteries going, do you remember when I was buried over there, Mum? And like fantastic stories.
Wow.
And that lured me in. And so I love stories. I love people's stories. And Ask Reddit always has interesting, Reddit is a cesspool, right, as a concept.
Yeah, okay.
And there's lots of horrors on it. But Ask Reddit sometimes has great questions. And am I the asshole? It's just people going, I've done this thing. Am I the asshole? And it's either, of course you're the asshole, or what are you talking about? There's no way you're the asshole.
That is brilliant. So is this what you do every morning? Is this
Sometimes I read, I like get the headlines, and then I'll jump on like Reddit to see if anything's happened, which is what a weird thing. And then we get up and the day starts.
That is amazing. Is that to just start your day with humor, or you just think it's so
I think
interesting?
so. Just I like, stories. It's stories.
Do you use it for content?
Not really, no, because sometimes it gets me thinking about things, or it makes me go, do people really have relationships like this? Like sometimes there are just like bonkers questions. But yeah, just kind of, I don't know, it's like I enjoy true narratives, I guess.
I was listening on TikTok the other day about, it was an online relationship and they knew they might not look exactly like each other, so they had a rule. This is the most fucked up story I've ever heard, and who knows if it's real. So the lady agreed that they would be intimate with each other before they saw each other.
Oh, I think I know what the story, was it her dad?
No.
I feel I've read that somewhere.
I wouldn't be surprised, but you can tell me that story because that's horrific.
Oh no, it was just they'd agreed to meet up and like had sex in a darkened room, and supposedly it was her dad.
Oh my goodness.
I feel like there are probably lonely people out there making stories up as well.
Yeah, the family stuff, I'm going to go with made up just so I can sleep at night.
Sure.
But the one that I was watching was she agreed that she would leave the door open or be unlocked. All the lights would be off. He would have to come in at a certain time. She'd be lying there, and then they do the deed. And then they turn the light on to like confess their love for each other. And the guy was 20 years older than she thought he was. And then they later found out he's an international criminal. Yeah, cool stuff.
Just on TikTok. So was the woman going, this is what happened to me?
She's the private investigator. That's her job.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I feel like that
I feel like she might be good at the investigating, but the private not so much. Like, should she really be letting that out in the world?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Are you on TikTok?
I am on TikTok.
So you would see the strangest things in the world.
Yes. Actually, and it's weird. I found TikTok quite useful for like weird little, this is so pedestrian, but how to fold your reusable shopping bags properly.
Interesting.
Genius. But like
Life hack.
Life hack. A proper life hack, and not just this is how you're supposed to use a broom. It's not really a hack to use a broom like it's a broom.
Yep.
So I love it for things like that. My cats are doing quite well on TikTok.
I've heard about this.
Yeah, it was supposed to be me doing clips of stand-up comedy, but it's just me with my cats.
I know that you've spoken about this over the years, but what is your obsession with cats? I've been wondering.
I don't know. I just always wanted, well, this is a weird thing to admit. After we finish recording this, I'm going to pick up another cat.
Oh, really?
Yep.
So to make how many?
3.
Oh, very nice. And why?
Because Cat Protection Society asked me if I wanted to do some work with them. And I was like, of course. This is like inviting me to a cat library. Of course I'd love to. And then I took my son and we saw this kitten and she was really gorgeous. And so I went home and my son said, I'd love to get that kitten. And I was like, well, your dad's probably going to say no. And his dad was like, all right. So now we're getting,
That's fascinating.
So let's hope the other 2 are fine. But I think I never had a cat as a kid, and I just was always obsessed with them.
Did you have pets? Like a dog?
We had a guinea pig and a
that count?
mouse.
A mouse and a guinea pig. That is a wit. How did they?
Oh, not at the same time. We had them, and we all individually had pet mice at various points. They don't last for very long, Michael. And
my
then
cup of tea.
we, I just like furry things, I guess.
So would you ever get like a rabbit?
Looked after my cousin's rabbits once. They feel like they don't quite have enough personality. No offense to rabbit lovers.
Okay. And cats.
Cats. I love that they love you on their own terms. I feel like dogs are quite happy to have any attention, whereas cats will only accept it if they would like it. Whereas dogs are like, I don't care, whatever you're doing, I love it. Like, I feel like there's more.
I feel some bias. I'm a dog owner, but...
Where's the dog?
Is that my parents?
No, I mean, I'm not averse to dogs, but I'm definitely a cat person over a dog person.
And then it's built up because I've seen you incorporate it even in your stand-up all the time, and obviously your TikTok. So it's just this love that you feel you have to share with the world.
Oh no, I think all you can do is talk about the stuff that matters to you or feels authentic. And it wasn't intended to be cats, but cats has definitely become part
of your life.
Yeah, and people seem to enjoy looking at my cats on TikTok, so I'm not going to deny them that.
You should do like collabs with I used to get when I posted photos of my dogs, all these dog agencies would reach out like, how would you like to collab?
Totally.
You just need to give me $100. I'm like, oh, that's a great deal.
Yeah, I keep getting messages from Fuzzy Pet Official, all different people going, we'd love you to collaborate, but I know that it's a scam.
Yeah, you just give them a bit of money and you'll see. It's not
Yeah.
That's very interesting, and I know that you like to talk and post about things that you really like, and I found this quote of yours, and I think it's still something that you do. But when you're doing stand-up and talking about things, you said, my personal aim is I want to say something that's meaningful to me. And I think that's very interesting.
When did I say that?
I've read everything. So
wow.
Yeah.
That's nice. That's nice that I said that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you still feel that way?
I think so. I guess maybe what I would say now is I would like to say something that's meaningful to someone else as well.
I think in the context, in the long form, that's what you meant as well.
Yeah. I want to, my aim is always to, at a show, is always to have everyone leave the room feeling better than they did when they came in. So that's my aim. Unless they're an asshole, in which case I don't care. Okay. If you're a white supremacist or a misogynist, I don't care. But if you are, I never want someone to sit in my audience and be told by me that who they are is shit. So
you don't like to divide?
No, and I don't, people make jokes about trans people or homophobic jokes or sexist or racist jokes. I'm not about that, because why would you want to make someone's world worse than it is?
Agreed. You do see, regardless if the comedian has that intent, sometimes I like jokes where they bag me, but sometimes a comedian might not hit the mark, and you're like, oh, that person's having an attack at me. I don't feel that way, but I can see around the audience.
Yeah, and I think it's really different if you are one of the community that you are making the jokes about, then that is you claiming that community as you're part of that community. It's like the way you can make jokes about your own family, but no one else had better make jokes.
That's my mum.
Yeah. Fuck you. I've said some stuff about my mum, but you're not allowed to. So I feel like there's that kind of boundary. But also I feel like, why would you want to send someone away? Because at the end of the hour that you do, if you're doing a stand-up show, you walk off stage and that person goes away with what you've said in their head.
Yep.
And that might be a thing that you never think about again, but they might go away going, who I am is just a bit shit.
That's very interesting, because when you're starting out, typically, just not everyone, some stand-up comedians are angry or they're hurt when they're starting up, and they feel the need that they have to express themselves in that way. And obviously you've been doing this for so long. When you were first starting out, I know we'll get into your improv journey first, after, I can't even speak. Was that something that you were doing it that way, or did you always kind of know that you're here to kind of make everyone feel good? And
I think I've always wanted to make people feel good, but then there are jokes that I know I've made in the past that I would not make now, because I just haven't thought about that group of people. And I think I've always been fairly innocuous, but there's definitely, as you get older and you mature and you are more empathetic to people, you certainly go, lots of comedians don't care about this, and that's fine. Everyone's on their own journey and has their own set of...
That's what you said very nicely.
comedy ethics.
Yep.
But for me, I just want everyone to feel better and maybe to have thought about something in a different way. Like if I can set you off going, oh, well, I've never thought about it like that before, or I've just opened your eyes up to something else in a different way, then that's great. But I don't want people to walk off feeling like I've just shat all over who they are.
I think that's very nice. You're leaving space to positively challenge someone, it sounds like, but not in they'll walk and feel worse.
And it's really easy to be funny when you're bagging someone. And I'll bag my friends, but always in a way, doing a podcast when you're bantering backwards and forwards, and if we're doing a debate or something, and I'll bag out the other team, but it's always in a way that it's inclusive as opposed to exclusive and punching down.
I really like that. Was there a moment where you realized you might need a slightly pivot or change, or has it just been being like you probably won't like this word, the veteran in the comedy industry?
Yeah, maybe it's just what I've realised what matters to me. Ooh. I guess. Yeah, I guess, like I love watching comedy. I love, like, I'm so appreciative of the craft of comedy. And, when people do something that I absolutely can't do or think in ways that I can't, I absolutely love that. And I admire people that are able to go deeper and more insightfully into things than I think I can. Interesting. Like, I really love, like, Laura Davis and Alice Fraser and things like their shows are wonders to me that I go, I couldn't do that. And I just love them for it. Like, and I feel like I'm challenged by their ideas. And it's about, I think comedy is about, well, anything really is about making connections, making unexpected connections. Yep. And I love it when, I guess because if I've come up with something, I know how I've come up with it or how clear it seemed to me or how easy it was to make that connection. But when you watch someone else and you go, oh, I never would have connected that, that's exciting. Oh, so you still, even though you've been doing this for so long, you still look at your peers or friends? And absolutely. Go, never. But what I also do, I think, which I'm quite good at, and I don't know whether everyone necessarily wants it, but I'm quite good at someone will tell 2 jokes on stage and I'll know what a third one is. So I'll be able to think of another punchline. So when I'm watching comedy as a person who's done it for a million years, I'm like, okay, I can see where you're going in this story, and then you're going to say so you can something like this. Or you could add that kind of thing. Yep. So, and often I'll say to someone, hey, I've thought of another gag if you want it. That's nice of you. Oh, just figure what's I should probably charge for it more than I do, but I think it's an improv background thing too, where it doesn't matter who gets the laugh as long as the laugh happens, as long as the scene is served. You're too kind, and we'll get on the improv background. But, I've always seen, depending on the environment and who, which gig it is, it can be very much an individual sport. Totally. And so by you giving, a lot of stand-ups I've heard, I think the industry is changing. You correct me if I'm wrong. It's very much, I do my thing. We're still friends, but these are my jokes and don't like the collab. And there definitely can be backstage. And it's really, it's... Once sorry, you can cut out all this stumbly stuff. No. Backstage at a comedy gig is really different from backstage at an improv gig. Yep. So backstage at an improv gig, everyone, and I know people hate improv. And I love improv. We talk about this on this podcast every third one. Yeah, so I love it. So bad improv is awful, but great improv, there's nothing like great improv. It's sublime. Like there are those moments where you go, how did that happen? Like, it's amazing. But backstage at an improv gig, everyone's like, I've got you back. Like, you're all kind of warming up together. You're doing little games to get you all in sync. And backstage at a comedy gig, everyone is really worried about what they're going to say. And there can be a feeling sometimes, especially I think with more inexperienced stand-ups, that any laughs that someone else is getting are the laughs that you haven't got. And they might run out by the time you get there. So that there can be... lack of abundance mindset. Yeah, totally. It's a lovely way to put it. And also what is really different is when you're doing a gig with mostly guys, often you just stay in the green room and you're all chatting and no one goes out to watch other people. But when I do an all-women gig or all-women non-binary people, everyone watches from the side of stage or watches backstage. Like there's a different atmosphere to it. That's so interesting. I would have thought, regardless of genders, that if you you seem to have the mindset that you want to keep on growing, which is amazing, and how in my way that's my philosophy. You would think that people would still want to hear or listen. That being said, we work together a lot, and so if I've seen you do your hilarious washing machine set 6 times, I might not come out and watch you do it this time. Yeah, gotcha. But there does seem to be a thing where women are more open to coming side of stage and go, oh my God, that was great, you did so well. And when I do gigs, if it's a lineup gig and I'm headlining, I'll always come before the start of the show and I'll watch everyone's sets because I like to see what's happening in the room. Also very rare. Yes. Okay, I got 2 questions. We'll pigeonhole that. Why do you think that the ladies and non-binary people... The ladies? I haven't been called a lady in so long. How lovely. I don't even know what to say. Why do you think that they're more... It sounds like
maybe more team players, if that's the right
I
word?
don't know whether it's like whether it's like a lot of times when you're on a lineup as a woman or a non-binary or a trans performer, you are the only one of that on a bill, and that is changing, especially places like Comedy Republic, really great at doing diverse lineups. But often, especially if you've been doing it for a while, you've been the only woman on the bill because there's a chick spot to fill and you've filled that chick spot.
Sure.
So I think especially maybe the older ones of us are really appreciative of like, well, I'd like to see what another woman's doing, and I know what it's like.
Oh, that's so nice.
To be
Growing together.
out there, and also to see what other people are saying. Like it's, you know, like it's exciting to hear diverse voices.
That's exciting. And I want to talk about your kind of growth mindset. And we've read the credits at the start, or your enormous resume. You've kind of hit the peak of what the Australian industry can offer, and New Zealand as well. And you kind of done everything. And it could be common once you reach like the top percent or whatever you want to call it, that you can kind of cruise. But you've done so many different things, which we'll talk about in a sec, but to still like want to go and watch people, see how, you know, mentioned Alice Fraser, I forgot the other person's name, but we've had Alice on the podcast and she's a genius. It can be some people, actually most people that I've seen off the podcast, they can just kind of want to cruise, or I've done it. Don't, you know what, I've hit the peak, but you've got this.
I never feel like that. I know that I'm still not as good as I would like to be.
Interesting.
I know that I still sometimes, I mean, everyone has bad days at work, but there'll be some nights where I'm like, how am I not better at this?
Naturally.
Yeah, I don't feel, and you know, maybe it's just my personality. I don't, but I think a lot of comedians are like this too. You always feel that it's never enough. Like you've never done as good as you could. And also it's not like, did you watch, is it Soul? Was it the Pixar movie about the guy who's a jazz musician and he ends up in the soul of a cat?
No, but
I said that completely wrong way. So there was a Pixar movie, I think it's called Soul, and it's a jazz musician who dies and ends up in the body of a cat.
Interesting.
But he's always wanted to, I'm going to spoilers if you haven't watched this movie, it may not even be the right title, but so he ends up back in his own body playing at the jazz club that he's always wanted to play at, and then once he's achieved this thing that he's dreamed about his whole life, he says to one of the other musicians what happens next, and the musician says something like, we come back and do it again tomorrow night. And it's I found that so profound, because I was like, yeah, the thing that you hold out for, once you've reached it, life still goes on and you still have to keep going. It's not like, it's not a static point. You don't get the credits and the fade out. You still live for the rest of your life. So yes, you've achieved that thing, but then you still have to keep achieving and keep being interested in what happens next. And it's not like, you don't get the freeze frame of you jumping in the air as the credits roll. It's like life goes on and you have to keep finding meaningful goals for yourself.
That can be that's very beautiful, but it could also be very depressing, because we do have this like Hollywood, like we watch every movie and TV show, like marriage is the end goal, or the person wins the grand final in the AFL, but they're still like 50 plus years typically.
Yeah, absolutely. And you either become the person that did that and life is now empty, or like lots of people struggle after like they've been planning for a wedding for ages, and then once that's done,
I'm saying it now.
What now?
Yeah.
But yeah, if you see it as this is a stepping stone or a thing that I'd like to achieve, and then what am I going to do next? What's exciting next?
I'm wondering, because you've done, you know, obviously you've been in the stand-up circuit for God knows how many years, but then you've done other shows, like I think you're about to do the Great Australian Bake Off. You've done like shows like Skithouse. The resume is enormous. I think you've done I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. You've done Dancing with the Stars, and that's just a little bit, but that's not on, like you've done everything in the Australian market. Was there a point where you had to like pivot or move the goalpost to go like, what do I actually want to achieve from this long term?
I think I've always been a really bad planner. Like I have always just gone, I'd like to do this. And I'll try that for a while. Like I love all of the, you know, because as well as being a comedian, I really love radio, or now podcasting. I think has kind of replaced radio. As like I love that sort of broadcasting. I love hosting things. I love talking to people. I love doing a whole bunch of other stuff like writing and everything. And I've been really fortunate that I've been able to explore those areas. And as a stand-up, I'm really lucky in that I can write my own work, so I can make the work for myself. But I don't think it was ever consciously about pivoting. It was just like, that looks like it would be really fun and I would like to do that.
Interesting. Limo, who is a colleague of yours, he was one of the only people I've heard this mindset where he says he doesn't plan. Things just kind of like come to him. Not that he doesn't work hard, but an opportunity will come, like, okay, I'll do that. And I think that's very interesting because, being in stand-up, there can be, typically it's stand-up. You wouldn't think that you'd do acting and all of these other things. But it just sounds like you've got this open mind where you allow yourself to just experience.
It's an interesting dichotomy in that I'm also a very anxious person.
Oh, interesting.
But I do have the kind of slightly woo-woo feeling that the universe will provide.
I like that. Can you expand on that?
So you can start a year going, I've got nothing coming up. I've got absolutely nothing. I've got no stand-up. I've got no TV work. I've got nothing. But in 3 months from now, something will have come along. Like, so, your diary can go from being quite empty looking to being really full.
Just like that?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. I mean, the pandemic was sort of the opposite of that. There was a day I remember sat down with my agent over the phone and just took everything out of the diary, like everything, because it was
brutal.
All just gone. It was yeah. I mean, the pandemic has been so hard for everyone.
Yes, but it's still, we've all got our own challenges within it. Yeah.
What was I telling you before I distracted myself? I believe that if you put yourself out there and you do the work, that the work will come. So work gets you work, and you never know what you do that might lead to something else as well.
I like this.
And again, harking back to improv, one of the rules is improv is say yes.
Yep.
And so that is a thing that I like to do.
Does that come from just seeing it? You every time you kind of keep on building upon the other thing. I know for a small period that you were a born again Christian, or there may be
as a teenager.
Yep. Sorry, yep.
That was about wanting a peer group.
Okay, so it didn't add any of these philosophies.
No. I don't.
Subscribe.
No, I sort of feel that most religions have good values, but it's basically be good to other people, don't be an asshole, and that's I don't think you need to put a God at the top of that to be the reason that you do those things.
That Bo Berman says it really well. He does like a song as if he was God, and it just anyway people have to listen to it. And it's just like very common sense. Like you don't need to rape someone just because God told you. You should just be
a good enough person to not
realize,
rape someone without just because you're scared of a guy.
Yeah, and I'm laughing only because he has such a good list of just things where you're like, yeah, that's just common sense.
Yeah, so I think church for me at the time was about community, about connection, and about wanting to find a peer group. And then I left when I was about 17, I think, because the homosexual law reform bill came out in New Zealand, and our youth group leaders were telling us that gay people were the devil, and I was like, well, that's not right.
Wow.
And 3 people I knew that I really admired and looked up to were gay, and I was like, well, this just isn't worth hanging out with these people anymore. Yeah. I just questioned it. And the judgment and the guilt and all that kind of thing, I'm just not a fan.
Yeah, I would think, and this is not a go at any religious person, I would think that the all-knowing God, and I have a different definition in my mind, but I don't think someone above us would want to criticize us and abuse us, or not abuse us, sorry.
Well, if we are all God's creations, then everything that's happened and happens is what God has done, and why...
Yeah, I don't subscribe to the shame and the guilt.
Yeah, no. Why would you? If you,
an all-knowing, loving, anything.
Yes. And I kind of go, waftily. I go, I think we're all connected in some way, and I hope that when I die, whether there's nothing after life, I hope that there's an instant as I die that I go, oh, there's nothing. Like I hope I get that moment of understanding what it is before I'm out.
I hope that you go to some place that you've always wanted to, and I'm not saying heaven or hell.
Yeah. Oh, there's something different, more to learn, somewhere else to be.
Yeah. Everyone's got their own journey with that. So that's very interesting. So is it just through, you're living a very unique life being a stand-up comedian in terms of that universe philosophy? Like, where did you pick that up? Because that's not everyone shares that.
Yeah, no, I think, and I know it was hard for my husband when we got together because he was a teacher and very used to you get paid at the end of the week when you do a week's work and you do the hours. I was
an accountant. So.
Yeah, so you like not the rigidity, but the
structure,
reliability and the structure of a normal life. And then someone made the point that if you own a small business, it's like being a performer. Like everything lands on you. So if you have a bad week for whatever you're doing in your business, then it's the same being a performer kind of
Yes, you're
thing.
an entrepreneur.
Yes, yeah, that's yeah. So I think I don't know, always felt like I was lucky enough to start earning money when I started performing. So I was in a unique situation in Christchurch where when theatre sports came to New Zealand, I did it at high school, and then a friend who'd moved to New Zealand and had done improv in Canada and was part of Loose Moose, which was like the original kind of theatre sports improv group, came out and started a company and invited me to be part of it when I was first year of university. And so there's only one professional theatre in Christchurch, the Court Theatre, and they were like, yeah, you can have the main stage at 11 o'clock on a Friday night, and we'll take a cut of the takings, and you can have free rehearsal space. So we were able to do, which would just never happen now.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, like what a dream run to be able to go and learn your skills and then do this late night show and learn what you're doing in front of an audience. So the audience is training you and you're training the audience at the same time to understand how it all works. And so I was always like, it was only $50 a week, but it was like $50 a week.
That's huge.
And and
like confidence.
And we had a really, really loyal audience, and the court were always really supportive. And so now, 31 years on, that show still goes in Christchurch. It's called Scared Scriptless.
Wow.
And there's still an improv company. Yeah. And if I ever go back, I can always go, I'd love to jump up, which I haven't done for a few years. But yeah, it was such a unique time, and it was such a good group of talented people, and we just made this thing happen. And it was I credit that with everything. That was the start of everything for me.
So I'm the biggest. I've never been a performer per se like you have, but improv has just changed my perspective on collaboration.
Yeah, absolutely.
Obviously, the yes and, but just it changes like correctly one's brain of how can we work together, not that they're an enemy or.
Yes, that I do this thing. Sometimes I do little. I wrote a couple of kids' books, and sometimes I'll do a presentation to the kids. And what I like to do is I get them to play little improv games together. But what I get them to do is to go into pairs, and like you make up the first name, I'll make up the last name. You say something that this character is scared of, you say something that this character loves, and then they put it together. And I tell them that a brain and a brain isn't a brain plus a brain, it's a brain times a brain. Because you come up with something, we come up with something together that's greater than anything you or I could come up with by ourselves if we're working well. And an offer that you make to me will take a scene in a completely different direction than the one that I thought it was going in.
Yep.
And the thing that I love about improv, and I find it a bit when I do the Guilty Feminist podcast as well, is I love being the mischief. So I love coming in and not blocking, but throwing a curveball in, and like being the play of like, you thought we were just in a dentist, but it turns out I'm a serial killer, or whatever. A much better idea than that. But I love the mischief in the play and the we used to call it pimping each other. Like, so you'd come in with an idea, and then I would do something that would force you to do something that maybe you didn't really want to do, but would be really funny for the audience. So that kind of playful push and pull of. Yeah, and there's nothing for me more lovely as an audience member watching someone on stage be in trouble and really enjoy being in trouble. Like there's a moment, where everyone's completely in the moment. It's a moment that's never going to happen again because these set of circumstances will never happen again. But yeah, just like that, what can we make, and how can we delight each other?
How can we delight each other? So you're obviously doing that through a few years. That has like kind of transformed you, and is something you apply outside of improv?
I guess so. I don't know. I think it's just improv and comedy are such a beautiful repository for weirdos. Like I feel like when you meet a weird little kid now, I'm like, one day you're going to be something magnificent. Or don't worry if your son does a weird thing, because he'll find his people. It's and again, just coming back to that connection thing, we all want to see ourselves, and we all want signals that we're all right. And I think it's really great seeing people be completely unique on stage and go, oh yeah, there's someone like me. It's like, why is it's really important that if you're a young gay kid and you don't have support around you, but you see Reese Nicholson being amazing on stage, or Joel Creasy, or Nath Valvo, how important to know that there are people like you.
We had a previous guest who is Latino. He's a gay Latino man, and he was saying his whole life he was told that he's too big, his nose is too big, he'll never make it, he needs to change his accent. All of the stuff that, I even get. But he then found a support system that reminded him, first of all, he can't change half of that, 90% of that stuff. And through the support system of reiterating that he's fine and that his differences actually make him unique, he's actually applied that ethos. And now he's basically one of the stars of this new Apple TV show. And it's purely because he realized he was fine being him.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I think that's so beautiful because we're told we have to be a certain way in all regards.
Yeah, and then to find out, it's the things that make you, it's your quirks that make you so lovable.
Yes.
Yeah.
So applying that to, I guess, stand-up as well. If you wanted to emulate someone that you've seen, you'll never be as good as that stand-up.
No, and you do get influenced by people. I remember when I came over here for a start, I was like, all of the young comedians sound like Greg Fleet, because he was the kind of the guy at the time that had a very distinctive voice, and young people kind of emulated that. And also when Daniel Kitson came out for the first time, there was lots of young comedians that kind of sounded a bit Kitsony, but we've already got one.
Yeah.
And we don't need someone else to do that, and no one else can do that as well as the original can. You can definitely be influenced by people and go, you can do that, but it's going to be your authentic voice.
Yes.
For example, sometimes a young male comic will get up and he'll do a whole lot of stuff about drugs and all the sex he's having, and you're like, you've never smoked anything and you've never touched a woman.
You're a virgin.
Yeah, just tell us about being a virgin. That's what's real, and the other virgin in the audience will be like, oh, great, I'm not the only one.
Yeah. That's a great example. So I know that you had a bit of a different start because, you're doing improv for a few years and then you get thrown into stand-up, I believe, for a corporate gig, which we'll expand on in a second. Did you kind of know that you had to be you, or is that something you've just...
I think it's something I've come to eventually. But improv, the good thing that improv did for me was if I'm ever on stage and I've forgotten what I'm supposed to be doing, I'm not frightened because I know I can just talk until something comes.
I love that.
And improv also teaches you to trust
what will come out
trust
next.
That something will come. It's a image I sometimes have of lightning strikes you and it comes out your mouth without it ever going through your brain. Kind of it's that being in the moment thing again.
There's something about, and I've experienced this through being the lowest grade at basketball as well, and just through improv classes, where something will come out of everyone. I'll just use me as an example. You're like, oh my God, I am a god. It's just for half a second, and you look at your hands I have magic.
I did that. I got that 3-pointer, or I did the great kappa for the end of the scene, or
And it's a feeling that I can't explain, but when you're in those moments where something just kind of takes over you, and it gives not only does it give you confidence to keep on going on, but it shows that when we let go, when we're not stressing, when we push the anxiety to the side, we're all geniuses, and I do believe that. We just have to push all of our negative programming out the way.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's just being in that moment and letting the moment be the moment. And I think sometimes that's why stand-ups don't like improv as a concept, because it feels like cheating if you haven't written it.
Yep.
But I think there's Parks and Rec, Chris Pratt had a great line where he was, I can't even remember what the joke was, but he's looking at a computer screen and I think Leslie maybe is sick or something. He goes, I can see what your problem is. You've got network connectivity problems, or something as if it's an illness. I've explained that really badly, but it was an off-the-cuff, it was an improvised line, and I'm pretty sure the writer was and I'm so angry about that. All the times that we, jokingly, but all the amount of sweat and tears that you put into writing something, and then someone's ad-lib is the perfect.
So not that I'm about to be a screenwriter, and hopefully, anyway, I can't really talk about it, but I've always come through the idea in my head that as a writer, I'm giving the tools to the actor, and the actor, I'd like the actor to say the words, but if they think, and they're not being like egotistical, if they think they can do better, go for it.
Yeah.
We're a team.
Yep.
It's not, I'm the writer, you say my words. And I hear that so much speaking to all the actors. And I just think, you know,
You're making the thing together.
you cannot write a movie, sorry, you cannot make a TV show or a movie with one person, not even 5 people.
Yeah.
Well, unless, you know, you're doing it off your phone. But if you the movies that you see on screen, there's at least like 300 people.
Yeah,
on it.
yeah.
And it blows my mind, whereas this isn't a go at stand-ups. This just seems to be at the start of the stand-up journey, that stand-ups are very much, it's all me. And I completely understand because obviously the nature of it. But when you see like improvisers, as you've said, we're all here together. Let's go and empower each other because if you're funny,
yeah.
I'm funny.
Yeah, and it's like that on the radio too. Like one of the things when I worked on radio, one of the first things they said is how the audience views, or the audience will view your co-host through the lens of how you talk about them.
Wow.
And how you relate to them. So if I'm building you up, you look great. But if I'm giving the appearance that you're a dick, then everyone's going to think you're a dick. Like, so it's a
Smart.
You're showing the audience how to feel by how you treat the other people on stage.
Did you get kind of, because once again, radio, I know I can see the natural progression from stand-up. But was radio on the cards? Was it something?
I'd always liked it. I'd always enjoyed it. My favourite part of radio was like the talk topics. Like my favourite ever.
I can see from the Reddit stuff.
Yeah. But my favourite ever prompt was, when has a cat saved your life? Because you hear lots of stories about dogs saving lives, but you never hear about a cat. And I'd found a newspaper story about a cat dialing 911 in the US or something.
No way.
It had been previously trained, but it had done the thing where it had dialed.
That is unbelievable.
Yeah, and we only got a few calls, but we, you know, like someone talked about their cat killing a brown snake as it was close to their little brother and that kind of thing. But I love those unexpected stories that you get.
They're so nice to hear as well. They're feel-good stories.
Yeah.
Well. And so in terms of radio, did someone kind of like tell you the rules of how to relate to
Yeah, they have do these things called air checks, which are horrendous.
I've never heard about this.
So an air check, so after you've come off, you've done a shift, you go in with the program director and they'll do something like, see, you know, this joke here, you should have done that better. Like they're really brutal.
Wow.
And sometimes they're useful. But
Sometimes.
are they? Yeah, so just kind of, and they kind of say, oh, you know, you're Michael, you're talking over Cal too much, or Cal, you're not making enough jokes, or we want to make sure there's a good rapport between you, and this week we're going to focus on Michael's having a baby, or, you know, whatever kind of. So they're kind of strategizing to make the rapport better on air, but sometimes it's just from people that don't know how jokes work.
Wouldn't that drive you nuts?
Sometimes, yeah. It's a very intense radio. I loved it, but it's very intense.
Please expand, because if you're very vulnerable being on stage, you have to think bloody quickly.
Yeah. So in a studio, there's like 2 of you or 3 of you, and you're relating to people on air. And, you know, if everything feels magnified because you're stuck in a booth for like 3 hours at a time. And so it can be pretty intense. And if you have a caller and it doesn't go well, or something's mucked up, it feels anything live feels really intense. And with radio, I think you have in the back of your head, I don't know how many thousands or hundreds of thousands of people are listening to this.
But you also don't get that feedback like a stand-up.
No.
So that's the scariest. You're completely live without the feedback besides the few people.
Yeah.
Was that, how did you kind of cope with that?
It was just intense. I think I'd probably go home and vent to my husband, like if I was frustrated about something, I think. But the one time that I felt like radio, because I worked on the Drive show with Akmal and Ed, and then I worked on Mornings with Dylan Lewis, and Dylan was the perfect person to be on Mornings with, because I was pregnant and then I had a baby, and he had a new child as well. And so I can't imagine being in a situation where I would have been comfortable with another man watching me express milk while we were playing the songs, and then I'd turn the pump off, and then we'd do a talk break, and then like it was a really vulnerable time, like you say.
Yeah.
But there was a moment when the Black Saturday bushfires happened, and we were having people ring in and say we need supplies to this vet clinic, and it felt like, oh, this is what radio's for. It's about linking people up and connecting people, and it felt like I felt really privileged to be part of that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And another theme, we'll come back to it, another theme just while it's in my head that I've kind of noticed through doing research with you and watching you over the years is like perseverance and resilience. And I heard you on another podcast, because that's very tough. We're probably underselling, and we could talk about that for ages. Like being on radio is an enormous gig. So many people are watching you. Obviously, you're going through stuff in your life just by having a kid, but you're working with people. And even like Akmal and Ed, I don't know how well you know them. You're also getting to know them. And yeah, we said a lot about that, but that's really tough. And then I also heard, and I don't know if this was a different show or was Skithouse, but they refer to it as skits.
Oh, that's the first show I worked on in New Zealand.
Okay, in New Zealand. And that sounded brutal as well.
Oh, it was brutal.
And I'll let you, it's your
story. So it was completely brutal. In a way, I'm glad that it was my introduction to TV, because it was the most brutal environment I've ever worked in. so it was... I'd done a stand-up competition on TV and got second on that, and through that the exec producer the director had got in touch and said, did I want to audition for this show as a writer/performer? And so I got the job, and it was mainly a writer, but occasionally like kind of warm prop in the background of some scenes. And I was taken on with a woman who became a very darling friend, Pip Hall, and so we're two young women, like 24, 25, and the writing team was mainly men who are older, and our one head writer, Donna Mullane, who was an amazing writer, but it was an environment that I went into not knowing how you write a sketch for a TV show, and everyone going, well, I don't know how to tell you. And so just... Oh,
so there was no like...
There was kind of no guidance. And I loved everybody that I worked with, and it was a great experience. But yeah, like the other head writer was like, well, I don't know how to tell you to write a sketch. You just got to come up with something funny. So it was like... Is
it because it's fast paced?
Or just how do you write a sketch? I don't know. Like how do you write something funny? What do you want it about? I don't know. Like it's really hard to have no guidance.
Yeah, but you'd think that if someone's like the head writer, they can give you some tools or at least point you in a direction.
I mean, they told me how to format a script, but it was really like I literally remember my first couple of days being like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know. Yeah, and I guess it was like almost pre-internet as well. So it wasn't like I had resources at my fingertips that I could look up. We got the internet while I was working on this TV show, and as a team of writers, we were like, but what is it for? What would you need an internet for? Like it was really, the exec producer was like, I've got this internet connection. It was like $1.50 a minute download, or I don't know, some weird kind of thing. But we just were so confused as to why you would need a thing called the internet. And we did this thing where we're like, well, you can just find out anything on the internet. And so someone typed in recipe for paella. And like there was a recipe paella from the magical gods of the internet. And so like the head writer's wife, that we printed out the recipe and she made it for us. It was like, oh, the gods have provided. Like we had such a weird idea of what, like, why would we find this useful? Like looking back, how bizarre.
Yeah, may have missed the mark on that one, but
yeah. And then like it was the same year one of the actors got a cell phone. She got a first mobile phone. She was the first person I'd ever met that had a mobile. This is like 90s.
Yep.
And we all thought it was incredibly wanky. So we went to the toy shop and we all bought a toy mobile phone. Every time Lindy took a phone call, we'd also take a phone call.
That's so good.
Like how ridiculous.
That's funny when it's new trends. But going back to that, the resilience and...
Oh, yeah. So the actual brutality of what it was like working there was that we'd have these writers' meetings and we'd have all submitted our sketches to the exec producer and we'd all sit around at the table and we'd be given the sketches back with notes on them, and it would either be yes rewrite or no, and sometimes what the fuck was the one that I got, and I don't have to tell you what a piece of shit this is, do I? Like, so it was really full on brutal. It was so brutal, but I survived. And like in our very first actors read through, so you have the writers read through, and then the writers go to the studio with the actors, and the actors will read through the scripts, and then you figure out if you need to rewrite from there. And one of the older actors was having a bad day.
Oh no. It
was our first read through, and Pip and I had written the sketch together, and it wasn't very good, but they'd let it go to read through, and the actor came over after they'd done the the run through of the script, and he goes, "Have you got sore fingers?" And I was like, "What?" And he goes, "From scraping the bottom of the barrel!" Like just screamed at me.
No way. Like
fully.
That's like a
enraged.
Curb Your Enthusiasm episode.
Yeah, well, similar sort of guy. So and I was absolutely mortified, and the exec producer just stood up and went, "Get him out of here!" Like this big kind of thing. And the actor rang me later and apologised, and I adore him. Like we're still in touch now, but he apologised. He was just out of sorts, and But it was such a brutal entry into the industry of.
Oh my God! First of all, to even think of a line like that in Rage, credit to him.
I was a very creative man. It's very funny.
Sorry, go
It
on.
was just so the job was like that. It was really noisy and mayhem but like I still got so much out of it. But it was definitely frustrating in that the cast was. They had sort of like 7 or 8 male actors and 2 women actors, and then 2 part-time writer actors, which is me and my friend. And so I would write scripts with women characters in them going, well, I want to get more women on screen. And so I would write things, and I'd have in the script, like a woman doctor or a thing, and then it would get cast and it would just be the guys again.
Oh my God.
And so I was like, oh my God, what can I do? What can I write that is absolutely cannot be male? What is it? And I was like, nuns. I could do nuns. And so I wrote all of these sketches with 4 nuns in them, and we did them read through, and they're really funny, and they just got through, and they cast them with the guys in drag.
Well, okay, first of all, you're laughing.
Guys dressed as nuns is pretty funny.
But okay, a few things to you. You're laughing, so that therefore I can laugh. That is pretty brutal to say the least. First time you're starting.
Yeah.
When I did accounting, I had one manager who wasn't anything like what you experienced, but I hated it. And I didn't have a strong enough why. And so I left. So I'm very proud that I left.
Yep.
But it's very hard to take abuse or whatever you want to call it. I know that you're laughing and you're smiling. But in that moment, you're young career-wise. And you still continued and didn't leave and say, fuck them or...
Well, the thing that I've always done is that when things have been hard, like, because I thought about walking away from the improv company for a while as well, because I felt like I didn't feel like I was kind of getting my voice heard enough, and I nearly walked away, and then I kind of had this thought of, but if I go, there's one less woman on stage, and all throughout my career when it's been tough, I've always gone, but I'm not going to leave a space that a guy's going to fill, and I don't mean that I don't mean that I hate men or that I just go, there's got to be more diversity than straight white men. Which is when I was coming up, that's what it was. And so I was talking to another younger stand-up the other night, and I was saying the same thing to her. Like every time I felt like I'm really tired, it's really brutal, it's a boys' club, I don't want there to be one less female voice.
That's very awesome. But at the same time, when you take on this huge mission, which I completely understand, you can take on a lot as well.
Yeah.
So how do you cope with that? Because that's a big mission. It shouldn't be, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe lots of crying probably at various points. But also I had this realisation far too late that when I started out in stand-up especially, I'd get these compliments from audience members, also from male comedians of, you're not like other women, you're really funny. Oh, no. And I took that as a compliment of going, yes, I'm not like other women. And it took me too long to go, what the fuck am I doing? I am like other women because women are funny. Like you kind of absorb that internalized kind of view that, it's a bit of an aberration if a woman's funny, as opposed to, have you not been in a restaurant where there's a table of 12 women and they're howling with laughter? Like it's not...
That's a great example.
Yeah, it's not because they've made an interesting sound with their mouths. It's like someone's told a hilarious story. Like it took me too long to go, it's like if a guy says to you, oh, you're not like other girls, he doesn't like women, and it's not a compliment.
Interesting.
Because if he's saying, I'm really enjoying your company because you're not like other women.
He hasn't spent a lot of time with other people.
Yeah, that means you don't like women. So it's not great. But so over the past few years, I feel I've been really conscious of going, rather than going, oh, I'm the only woman in the room, I'm so flattered to be going, hey, the door's open, come on it. To go, we need all the different voices.
I respect that. And even just from screenwriting, for example, I assume, not that I have the experience, if everyone was me, then there's already me, and what's the point of hiring 6 me's? You want the diversity in thinking at least. That's like the bare minimum, because it's a different way of seeing the world.
Yeah.
And what, go on.
Sorry, there was a podcast I was listening to, and I can't remember which one, but they gave the analogy of, they're talking about when you hire scientists, you don't hire them all from the same grad schools or the same universities, because you want people that have been taught in different ways and look at things in different ways. And they were giving the example of
interesting.
Even at the baseline, do you keep your tomato sauce in the fridge or in the cupboard?
That is a very good question. I think only once I open it, it
goes in the fridge.
Yeah.
So some people keep their tomato sauce in the cupboard and some people keep it in the fridge. So if you run out of tomato sauce, your problem solving will be different depending on what you do with that tomato sauce, because you go, oh, what else is in the fridge that I can use? Or what else is in the cupboard that I can use? So you're already looking in a different area for a solution. So rather than having 6 people that all put their tomato sauce in the fridge, you need tomato sauce in the fridge, tomato sauce in the cupboard, someone who doesn't eat tomato sauce, someone who's all about sambal. Like, even the way you problem solve is important, because you'll be looking for solutions in a different area.
That's very interesting. And so in terms of like going for what we were saying before, in terms of, taking on the sexism, or at least the lack of opportunities, which seems to be predominantly male, how are you feeling now with everything?
I think there's still a ways to go, but it's so much more diverse, and it's so exciting to see. There's so many trans comedians. Not so many, sounds like it's 50%. It's not, but there's so many like new trans voices that we haven't heard before. There's so many people of colour doing stand up, more women, more non-binary people. Like I love all of that coming through, because it just makes you grow. Listening to someone's different perspective is, how can that be bad? Like,
yeah. I get you. But in terms of, so like back on skits, sounds horrible. Yes, you learned. And you're smiling. Okay, good for you that you can like smile and move forward. You would have still, I know that you were talking about like you had this big mission, but there still would have been within you, because that's a large mission, which is still part of you. There's also must be a part within yourself where, you know what, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get to the top. So were you very determined?
Yeah, I was determined. I think I always bring it back to being the youngest of 3 kids and having 2 older brothers, and we fought all the time. And I wasn't physically strong enough, obviously, to best an older brother, but I could. I didn't want to be beaten, and I could use my words to aggravate them. So
Crush them.
Yeah, I feel like my quickness has come out of competitive spirit with my brothers, and also just having a parents that never expected me to be any less than my brothers. Like, so it was never like, I'm 52, so this is years ago now. But like, I was always expected that we would all go to university. It wasn't my brothers would go to university and I'd have to do something else. Like, there was always an expectation that we were equal. There was
Which is how it should be.
Yeah, which is how it should be. But
maybe in those times, is that
yeah,
what
it was
you're
kind
into?
of less prevalent, I think. And always my thing is like, it's frustrated, and I got so frustrated on that show. Like, angry tears, frustrated, especially once we had a conversation with the director one day, because we called a meeting, me and the 2 of the women actors and me and the other writer performer. And before we could say what we were frustrated about, he said, I know what you're here for. You're frustrated about they're not getting enough roles and la, la, la. And went through and later exactly what we were frustrated about it. And then he was like, and it's not going to change.
Whoa. So he heard you.
Yeah, so he knew what we were irritated about, or angry about, but was like, yeah, well, that's not the way it works. So sorry.
That is the biggest mindfuck, because normally people don't listen. So
we didn't even have to say it out loud. Like, he knew.
That's even worse.
Yeah.
That's, to me, like, listening is like the hardest bit to like understand where you're coming from. And so obviously like understood.
So it's basically going, I know what you're upset about, but I don't care.
That's the worst.
Yeah.
If it's like, oh, I had no idea, I'll try.
I'm
and
so
you don't
sorry.
do anything. Bonkers. Okay, please expand on it. I've never heard of that. That's like a.
Well, it's just that and that was it. And then I eventually left the job because that was in Wellington. I wanted to move to Auckland.
Yep.
And also I didn't want to be a writer that didn't do very much performing. I wanted to be a performer.
Yep, because acting was the gold standard.
Yeah, which I'm, I'm so glad I found comedy because I don't think I'd be
You've done
great.
a lot of acting.
Little bits. I'm always a comic relief in something though. It's never.
Still acting.
Yeah. But yeah, so I moved up to Auckland, and then things again like we were saying before, not planning, just little things came up, and I don't want to say it was all just luck because obviously I brought something to the projects, but work got me work.
So let's go back to the improv journey. Somehow you found it at school, which in New Zealand is already a small place. I only found out about improv like at least 5 years after, and in Melbourne, which is probably got one of the big improv places in Australia. How do you even discover it? And then when well,
I guess it just arrived with a bang kind of thing, and it was there was a bank that sponsored like the National Theatre Sports Champ, so it was called United Theatre Sports because there was a United Bank. And because New Zealand is so small, it's a much more agile place, really, and the community is so small, and you get to know each other, and its size is its advantage in that if there's a comedy scene, it's a small comedy scene, so you all know each other pretty much. Or like the people who have the opportunities, you pretty much know who they are, I guess. The local radio station, because it had kind of taken the country by storm, the local radio station ran a theatre sports competition, and our high school team won that competition. And then from that was when the Michael Robinson, who started the professional troupe, that was kind of where he saw us, because there was the Court Theatre was running the physical competition. So it was community groups like actors or whatever, and then a couple of high school teams, and we won the whole thing. And then from there, I was asked to join Scared Scriptless.
That's so cool. So when you first found improv, did you think like I know you had acting. Did you think that you could make a career out of it?
No, not at all. And I was terrible at it.
Really?
Just because I did
at the start, or
at the start, and got better.
Yeah.
And then discovered that really it's just playing. It's listening and playing and building, and you're with your friends and you get to laugh. Like how great you go to work. I'm really lucky in that I love my work, and that I loved my work before it was my work.
Awesome.
So, but I like doing it. It was addictive. Once you get your first laugh, like it's very instant reward.
Yep. So they hit you quickly.
Yeah, and you get instant feedback as to whether something works or it doesn't, and that's really exciting. That's a tightrope.
I want to pigeonhole that. I'm just fixated on the play concept because through my experience, and maybe I'd been corrupted longer than you, coming from like an accounting background and my life being ruined as an accountant, when I did improv, it was very hard for me and also my peers to get out of that mindset of like, we can't play. We have to, and it was like these mental barriers that every human that I saw had. Some, I wouldn't say luckier, that they're like, whatever, they could get there quicker. But a lot of us, it was a real struggle to like understand that you can actually play and have fun. And
do what you like.
Yeah. What was that like for you?
I guess I had always been a creative person, and I was quite shy as a teenager, and I worked out that if you could make someone laugh, you didn't have to have a proper conversation.
Genius.
I did not know what that proper conversation was supposed to be like. So if I make you laugh, you like me, and then we can have a bonkers conversation or a funny riff about something, and then we never have to actually have a human conversation.
But is it more like the small talk? Like now I avoid at all costs, like, oh, the weather, it's cold now, and blah, 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 blah. Now I will make a joke so we can get past that.
Yeah.
And then hopefully have a more interesting conversation.
Yeah. And what I love, I love not small talk. Like I love it if you meet someone and suddenly you're instantly in a really deep conversation about something, or I don't know, like at a wardrobe fitting, and suddenly the wardrobe woman and I were talking about menopause, and we'd met each other like 3 minutes before. Like just that
yeah, that's nice, like a human connection.
Yeah, exactly. The stories and the connection and what do we have in common, and what are you going to tell me that's going to blow my mind?
There's nothing worse. Like when I go to, they're called Minions, for example. I've been to a few recently, and they're like the night after the funeral, just to I don't even know if celebrate it. went to Jewish school and I don't even know how to describe this. But anyway, people can Google
So
it.
kind of like a wake. Is it like a
Yes, in that sometimes you have them.
Boxing Day of a wake?
That is very interesting. Someone will definitely correct me, but let's just go with that. I don't think that's correct, but we'll go with that. It's the funeral, and then at the nights for however long, you just go and meet the family and like send your love. Yep. And my God, when there's like, and this is already a horrible experience, but when there's like 200 people you haven't seen and it's the same conversations and it's a minion, you're like, I don't know if I can make people laugh here. What's kind of the balance? Yeah. I do it anyway because I've got no shame, but it's just like the same thing every time. And I cannot stand it. I'm like Larry David, can't do the small talk.
Yeah. It's what I find now is that sometimes being a performer and people have seen you on stage, you have a weird relationship where they feel that you have a friendship because you've told them things that you normally only tell friends.
Yeah.
And so they feel comfortable saying something to you that they might say to a friend, but
like,
you wouldn't say to a stranger. You know,
no.
so like,
you get that all the time.
You're all right, but I much preferred Peter Hellier. Like just something that like like you don't need to tell me that. Like I can go the rest of my life not knowing that I was not as good as someone else tonight.
I thought it would be more like having a conversation if you're like best friends, not like an insult.
No, it's just like, or like, you know, the way a relative will tell you you've put on weight or something like that. People will say
oh, thanks, mate.
Stuff to you. My wife likes you. I don't see that. I don't get it. Like just some like and they're not meaning to be hurtful or anything, but they feel there's a level of familiarity.
But I wouldn't even say that to my friends.
No, well, neither do I. But people are weird.
So, you know, obviously you've got like the ratio is probably like 1 to 99 of good news, good like feedback to bad feedback. How do you cope early on with all of that stuff?
Terribly. A really good lesson to learn is not to ever Google yourself or read reviews. Just don't.
Yep.
I got a review in New Zealand once. It was so harsh. I cried every day for a week. It was really vindictive, terrible. And like it literally took me months to get over it, like, which is what a first world problem to have. But it was such a vicious review that friends who had seen it in the paper didn't know how to talk to me because it was just so awful. And I finally had one friend ring up and go, wow, that was fucked, wasn't it? Geez, she really meant you. And I was like, oh, thank God, someone else is acknowledging.
Yeah, it's not like the elephant in the room.
Yeah. But like to this day, my management or my husband will look for reviews, but they don't even tell me if there's been one. And I know that there's a few out there that aren't great. And I had a situation a couple of years ago at the Perth Comedy Festival where one of the comics went, oh man, you got a bad review, didn't you? And I was like, I don't know, I haven't looked for it, don't tell me anything about it. And he goes, what do you mean? You must know. I mean, because it was a really bad review. I was like, I don't, stop talking to me. And he goes, no, but it was a really bad one. I was like, don't talk to me. Stop telling me. Because he goes, but you can't not know about it. I was like, but I don't know about it because I know that it has such an impact on me that, you know, 1,000 compliments in one barb and I'll be, you know, I will focus on that one barb forever. So it's just better for me.
I agree.
I don't know when the reviewer is there. I don't know what they thought. I don't seek it out. And I'll be told by management if there's like a good line to use on a poster.
Okay, that's how it should be. I have a personal bias for no reason. I don't understand reviewers. And I've had many people that have been in the theatre world, and I know reviewers actually hold more weight there. You can get a lovely reviewer, but they might not like your comedy. Yep. There's just so many variables which we can speak about for ages. And it doesn't mean you're a bad comedian. It's like J.K. Rowling, she tried to sell her books to like 100 people. They said no. But someone liked it and then it became good. You have had so many shows over the years, and the proof's in the pudding that you're obviously a good stand-up comedian. You've been doing this for so long. But just because of one person, I know we're all human.
Yeah, or they're the wrong age group. I'm trying to think of the name of the writer, John Lahr, I think it is. He was a reviewer. His dad was in The Wizard of Oz as maybe the Tin Man or the Lion.
Wow.
But he had this great book of reviews, but the line that I've always remembered from one of his was, the job of a reviewer is that you know more about the play than what I thought of it.
Wow.
Which I think, you know, like because you could go into a room and 100 people are laughing and it's just not your cup of tea. As a reviewer, you should be able to go, I really didn't like this for these reasons, but everybody else in the theatre had a great time.
Yeah.
Like that seems only fair.
Agreed. But it's not in this, which we won't get onto this topic, but in this like clickbaity world, and it's about getting someone to read it.
And vitriol is like people love reading negativity. Like
I hate it. I won't read it, anything, even if it's like factually correct. I avoid it. You can present data or information, not in "we're all going to die" type information. It's my huge pet peeve, and it doesn't make the world better a place. And like you said, even though you seem to have changed it, that you're trying to say something that's meaningful to you as well as the audience, and make everyone leave better than when they left. And that's how it should be. That's why I hate these
I feel like, and I know that's kind of a Mary Poppins kind of view of like, or Pollyanna kind of wanting everything to be positive, but I think
it's more for me, because thank you for saying that. It's not that there's not harsh realities of the world, but you can still present information in a better way. Like, for example, it's skits. They can say this is not good. That's fine. But to say like this is shit or the worst thing ever, it doesn't mean we're not being like negative. There's a way to present information.
The thing that I always say is there's no HR department in comedy. Like so there is that. And we also as stand-ups, we operate in this weird space that is we are at work, but everyone else is on their night out. True. So, and there's alcohol around, and there's all these other factors where we are being. It feels like we're kind of at a social gathering, but we are still at work. But it's the kind of blurring of lines makes it's a weird space to operate in.
It really is, and it's just from the bad review side. Obviously, that can just hurt the ego. Obviously, you're obviously confident to be able to do what you've done. How did you kind of let that go? Or
I think it was just finally realizing that it's too hurtful to read negative things, and it's not giving me I'm not getting any benefit out of reading something negative about myself, and that I've got a really supportive I've got a really supportive husband, and he was always like, I'll read the reviews and I'll tell you if you can read the reviews. But it took me a long time to not fear the audience, even though I'd been doing stand-up for years and had done lots of improv, but I would be on stage, backstage in the 10 minutes before I was about to start, especially doing festival shows and stuff, and I'd be like, oh my God, what do I do? This is awful. Oh my God, it's going to be awful. I'm going to hate me. Oh my God. And just work myself into this state of like, it's going to be shit, and then get out there and it was great and go, oh, why did I do that? And then weirdly, it was an acupuncturist who I was talking to, who's doing acupuncture for stress. And he said, we were talking about being a stand-up, and I talked about how stressed I would get before going on. And he goes, but don't you all want the same thing? You're all on the same team. You all want you to have a good show. And I was like, oh my God, that's what it is. I'd been looking at it as combat, as I'm going to fuck yous all. You're going to love this kind of, as opposed to now the way of view is come with me. Come on. Look, we've got a fun thing to do.
That goes back to like your abundance mindset and sharing it. That's very interesting. So do you think, please correct me if I'm wrong, when you like receive a review and you're kind of on edge, were you playing it safe comedically, or are you still being you?
I don't know. I'm probably playing it a bit safe, I think. I still, like now as a person, am mortified if I hurt anyone's feelings.
Yep.
And I'm sure that, like I know I say stuff on stage that I would be not brave enough to say off stage. But I think, like I still feel like I'm growing, and I'm still working out who I am on stage and what that is. Still,
Isn't that exciting?
Yeah, kind of. But also, like, why is it taking so long? But I think it's more leaning into the kind of. I think my improv was very different from my stand-up, and my improv was more whimsical and fantastical.
Yep.
And I probably haven't been like that doing stand-up, but now I think over the past few years I've certainly leaned into, like, I love playing with words and things like that, and just kind of going, oh, this is really nerdy, but maybe that's actually fun, kind of, and doing more.
Well, it sounds like you know who you are, and you've got a very strong voice from seeing you over the years. But also, and I know you're very modest, so you can be arrogant. I'm giving you the space to be arrogant. For probably like the last God knows how long, you would be in the top 10 comedians of like a household name. Everyone knows who you are. And
I feel that's a very generous rendition.
You're allowed to be arrogant for this segment. And you've done so many other things which we've spoken about as well. How, and we spoke about this a little bit before, how have you kind of like moved the goalposts? Do you still, I know you kind of had that mindset of like, you'll just take the opportunities when they come, but Have you changed the goalpost of what you...
Yeah, the thing that I want to do at the moment, I'm a terrible procrastinator. That's probably one of my big flaws. I'd love to do like a game show, like a panel show, but like come up with a format.
Cool.
For like a comedy kind of panel show.
Ed wanted to do that as well.
Yeah, it's such a lovely, like all the great ones, like, you know, have you been paying attention to Would I Lie to You? And way back, Reeves and Mortimer's panel show. I don't know if you've ever watched it.
Not that one.
Oh my God, so funny. It's so bonkers. They would do things like, it was when Matt Lucas. So they had Matt Lucas, it was his sort of start. He played a man dressed as a baby called George Dawes, and that was just so that they could say, what's the scores, George Dawes? And they'd have two panels answering ridiculous questions, and then like the final round, one night was Richard E. Grant had to have like a chamber pot on his head, and they were rolling apples down a slide, and he had to try and catch them in the chamber pot. Like just weird. And one of the guys, losing team, had to stand there while they swung taxidermied animals at him. Like, and they just got bigger and bigger and bigger. So it started off like a stuffed vole, like hitting Mark Lamar, and then it ended with like a grizzly bear on a chain, and just like the hilarity of watching a man be knocked off his feet by a stuffed bear. Like,
I like that.
Yeah,
it's got like Auntie Donna vibes in a sense.
Yeah, but this is like early 90s, I think. Like, it's worth going back. It's very hard to find, but just I love that kind of anarchic piss take, and I love, you know, the places that I really enjoy playing are on panel shows, because I feel like that's one of my strengths, is serving things back, or you know, improv. Yeah, the improv stuff.
So call Working Dog up once you're done. And have you got a concept? Or
I've got elements to it, but I still don't know what it is. And also the thing I'm finding interesting, like Taskmaster is such a brilliant format, like beautiful. And what I love about it is that Alex Horn, who's the sidekick in the original, it's his idea. But he's recognised that he's not Greg Davies or Tom Gleeson. He's recognised that he's better in the lower status sidekick role, but it's entirely his show.
That takes a special human,
doesn't it? And I view myself as a sidekick, so I'm trying to figure out what can I do that I get to shine and do my thing, but I don't have to do the big responsible. Because I think there's a difference in being a team captain and being a host. The host has to do all the business, but a team captain.
We can lead from. We had this one teacher, and I'm pretty sure he slept with half the teacher, so he's not exactly, and he would tell us about it. And he was also our basketball coach, and he would tell us, so he's not exactly the best role model, but he would hit on the refs. And we'd just be like, he wouldn't ever coach us. But the one thing he left with me is not that, I say that because he's not exactly the best role model, but maybe for 15-year-old boys at the time. He said that you could lead, you don't need to be the leader at the front. You can be the leader at the back and just steer the ship. You might not get all the credit, but a leader doesn't need to necessarily take that. Yep. I couldn't believe a man like that, but that's such profound.
Yeah.
And this was also a teacher. I just feel like bad-mouthing him because it's hilarious. He'd be like, oh, guys, I'm so hungover. Can you just play on your phones and pretend we're doing work?
Wow.
And this man actually changed my life with that sentence. And it sounds like the example that you've given as well.
Yeah. But I love that, But that comes back to the improv thing as well. It's like you don't have to be the person that's getting the laughs for the outcome to be achieved. You can be the person that lobs the ball up in the air, and even if you're not the one that hits the ball.
Yes, I agree.
You know,
that's why I love it. I think we'll quickly. There's just a few things I want to tie up before we wrap up. So you're doing improv for a while, and then you're doing corporate gigs, and I think that's how you're living. And then through the corporate gigs, they're like, we need people to do stand-up, so you do stand-up.
Yeah, so the director of our company, our improv company, when we need to offer different things to our clients, you go and try stand-up.
Isn't that fate? Would you have
do you think? No, I wouldn't have done. I remember as a child once going, I would like to be a comedian, but I'm not funny like that. And I'm sure there are some people that would agree with that assessment, but I dismissed it as, that's not something that I can do. And also, because I was coming at it from an improv point, I did my first stand-up gig with written material, and then I wrote a whole different set for the next week because I didn't know that you hone your material time and time again.
And then I've briefly heard the story. How did the second gig go?
Terrible. I remembered everything except the punchlines. So I remembered all of the setups, and I'd be going somewhere and the audience would be like, yep. Oh, no, we've moved on. So agony for everybody.
That is hilarious. So when did it realise that you would actually be good at stand-up and you'd continue it?
I think we just kept going because we already had an audience from our improv. Like we already had a support. Christchurch didn't have stand-up. Well, like we were the only show in town in terms of comedy at that point. And so we had a supportive audience to do stand-up, and then there was a little tiny stand-up scene in Wellington, and then Auckland was kind of where the stand-up scene happened. And that was when moving to Auckland was when I felt like I was properly. But then compared to London, where you can do as many gigs a night as you want.
Yeah.
Like it was still a very small scene.
But then you moved to Melbourne for various reasons and your life changes. Actually, last thing before we do a rapid fire segment, how has the hunger changed? I know we talked about the goalposts, but when you're an inverted,
the hunger has changed in that I don't get as stressed out about stuff now that I've had a kid, which is such a cliched thing to say.
That's awesome.
But I remember this TV executive saying it to me once years ago, and a man I disliked intensely, like a little bit like your basketball coach really, but he said to me, I don't care what people think of me at work or what they say about me in the papers as long as I can go home and my 4-year-old loves me. And he was like, she's the only one whose opinion really matters. And I was like, yeah, like now that I've had a kid, like, oh God, I died on stage, but I've got this cool little dude at home and I've kept him alive for another day, and that's exciting. Like it just kind of shifts you.
Took me a while and kept him alive.
You've shifted. Yeah, like you realise that's it's still, you still want to achieve things and have goals, but really like I love my family and hanging out and watching a person grow up, and you get to experience things all over again for the first time. Being stuck at a rail crossing is really annoying as an adult, but if you've got a kid in the car, it's great. You can count the cars, you can, it just gives you a perspective on looking at things fresh through young eyes, I think.
That's a very good response. And then, no, there's nothing there.
No, I was going to say, and also he's provided me with a lot of material, so that's been useful.
That's the best thing about having kids, I've
Yes.
heard. And just last thing on that, when you finally, because I think you got like Best Newcomer and maybe another award very early in your career, maybe 2-3 years, is that when you're like, okay, I'm like...
I just kept giving myself 5 years, and if it didn't work out in 5 years, I'd get another job.
Which was?
I was going to go into advertising as a copywriter. Yeah, because I liked copywriting because it was a creative exercise.
Yep. Okay, that's very interesting. So what we're going to do now is a quick rapid fire segment to wrap up the podcast. Okay, so first thing that springs to mind, but if you need time to think about it, then obviously take your time. We might tap a few points in this. Oh, actually, I forgot to ask this, but this will be in the rapid fire segment. Why did you decide to write 2 children's books?
Because I've always wanted to write a kid's book, and I got approached by Scholastic to write an idea of theirs that they already had. And I went, I've also got this idea, because the story is about a family called the Peppertons, and when my son was little, I worked out that if I told him a bedtime story with the same cast each night, that was one less thing I had to make up. So it was always about the Peppertons, and he would also direct me and stuff. But so I had this cast of characters that I knew very well because I'd tell him a bedtime story every night. And so they said, oh, don't write ours, write yours. And then they wanted a second book, and then they've gone, oh, that's enough. So that's why there's only 2.
Oh, that's enough. But if he said, let's do a third one?
I don't know. I've got another idea that I'm writing. I've been writing for the last couple of years, which I haven't shopped around yet, but is fermenting, I'm calling it.
Would you consider writing a book about your life?
No.
Why?
Because I don't think it's interesting enough.
I think you got a pretty interesting life.
Oh, I guess because I look at all my friends who've done bonkers things or had outrageous life histories, and I kind of go, I've just been pretty ordinary, really.
That's so funny because there'll be so many people listening and be like, how have you, not only have you thrived as stand-up, but you've been able to do all of these other things. And
I guess. It's. I think I wouldn't write it because I wouldn't be interested in reading it.
Okay, interesting.
But I do want to write I'd do a book of essays, and I'd love to, I used to write for The Age, I'd write columns for The Age, I'd do something like that.
And then you can maybe even into a podcast.
Yes, and podcast is another thing I would like to do.
I thought, don't you host?
I
podcast?
sometimes co-host on The Guilty Feminist,
Yep.
which is my favourite. And Alice Fraser had a podcast with Sammy Shah and I that the ABC put out,
Oh, that's right.
which was only got one season, but was great.
And how do you deal when shows get cancelled? You know, you've done Whose Line Is It Anyway, you've done that, you've done radio, you've done...
Just that, like I was hurt by radio because I loved radio so much, and they just didn't renew my contract at the end of 2 years because I kind of didn't fit in anywhere for them, and that felt really brutal because I thought I'd done a great job on radio and I loved it. But you just kind of have to get it, like life. There are disappointments in life, and you have to move on, and you have to keep getting excited about the next thing.
Radio is brutal.
Brutal.
Where it's just like, yeah, you're good, but no thanks. And it's not really like one's fault.
And you get also, sometimes you get paired with people that they go, okay, you've never met this person before, have instant rapport. Like, so there's...
You're best friends and you've been best friends for ages.
Yeah.
So do you have like a philosophy or ability how to cope? Because there's a lot of things that you've done that inevitably end.
No, I guess you have to let yourself feel the feelings and you have to be disappointed. Yep. And it's okay to be disappointed. It's okay to say, I'm really sad that I've lost that gig.
Yep. And
feel those feelings. Have good friends that you can talk to about it. And then you just, you can't take it personally as well. Like you can't, which is a hard lesson, and one that I keep learning for myself as well. It's like, it might not have been that you were shit, you just weren't right or you weren't what they wanted.
Yep.
It's like when you don't get a part that you auditioned for or whatever, there's 100 different reasons it might have been. It's not necessarily that you were bad at it, just that they wanted someone else.
And from the acting space, which I'm sure you've heard 1,000 times, but I've heard so many times that they weren't tall enough, their eye colour wasn't
literally.
right.
Or we've got someone with brown hair, so we can't have two people with brown hair, or whatever. Yeah.
And we didn't really get time to talk about Whose Line Is It Anyway, but the moment when you realised that you got it, because that is an enormous show. I've had half the cast in the other series.
Yeah. I was so thrilled because I love all of those people on that show, and it was such a great show. Like, it's such an iconic show, and it was just a great experience. It was, loads of fun.
And why do you think, it's also a bit loaded, why do you think that didn't continue? Because to me it looked like it had.
I would say that would be something to do with like network and money. It would be something like, it was definitely not a quality issue on screen. It would have been something backstage.
I really want a show like that, or Thank God You're Here, to come back. There's
Thank God You're Here is my favourite TV show that I've ever done.
It's the only DVD that I own.
It's such a Working Dog is so great at working through every single idea and moving part of a show. Like their preparation and they just do so much quality control on it before it ever goes to air. And they also did that thing of like always leave them wanting more, like didn't run it into the ground.
Okay, but please, I know that you it's such a good show.
It was such a beautiful show. And it was so lovely as an improviser going, oh, this is what I'm best at.
Yeah.
To walk through the door and know that there would be something exciting behind the door.
Please do me a personal favour. That's the dream. Okay, I'll get back into the quick rapid fire segment. We sort of answered this. What's been your special ingredient to work all these years?
Ask me that again.
What's been your special ingredient to work all these years?
To be good to work with as well as being good at what you do.
Very nice. Favourite thing to do when you're not working?
I do things with my glue gun. I make weird stuff out of shiny shit.
Can you expand on that a little?
So over lockdown, for example, I made lots of headdresses using like Christmas decorations and things I'd found at $2 shops and did little videos with me wearing the headdresses, like old toys. I glue them all together.
Is that online? Can people see that?
Yes, yeah. It'll be on my Instagram. Yeah, I think it's in my Instagram story highlights thing, and also my very first TikToks, which did not take off. No one on TikTok was interested in hairdressers.
That's very cool. If you could gain any skill in the world, which one would it be?
Sing. I would love to be able to sing.
Well, you can dance now, so you're almost the triple threat.
I can only dance those dances.
I'm sure you can do more. Okay, I know that you've got a partner. If you're on Tinder, what would your bio say about you?
Oh, Lord. It would not say that I was a comedian. what would it say about me? Noisy but fun,
Noisy but fun.
but only because someone else said that about me. A friend saying, can you please let Cal stay with you while she's auditioning for drama school? She and her friend Susan are noisy but fun.
That's beautiful and poetic.
And could also be construed in many different ways.
We'll go with what I said. What keeps you in a positive mindset when things perhaps aren't going well?
That everything will pass.
This too shall pass.
Yes.
I like that. If money wasn't a factor, what would you...
Can I go back and answer that more comprehensively?
Yep.
So when the pandemic hit, the worst thing happened. And it was a real moment for me where I was like, well, if I just have to go and work in a shop for the rest of my life, then that's what I'll do, because the worst has happened, and whatever I need to do to go on is what I will do. And it just made me so grateful for the career and everything that I'd had so far, and just to go, well, practically I'll do anything, whatever I need to do. If my job no longer exists, I'll do something else.
That is beautiful. So did you genuinely think
Yeah.
that? Wow, that's
also,
scary.
I have never wanted to do I'm a Celeb, but at that stage it was just how exciting to be offered
that
a
during
gig.
COVID
Yeah, that
times?
was towards the second year, I think. So still in lockdown. And when they asked me to do it, I was like, well, everything else is upside down, so why not? Digby loves the show, and how great to get a paycheck. And I did it, and I thought I was going to endure it. I thought I would endure it and try and get out as soon as I could, and it was the most profoundly positive experience.
Awesome.
It really made me reflect on how lucky I've been, along with, like, on top of my realisation in the pandemic anyway, but to go, what an experience that hardly anyone gets to have. I've met the most amazing people on that who are now dear friends, and I discovered I was more resilient than I thought I was going to be. Like, I'm a real princess and I don't camp. And then I slept in a bunk under in a bush. There was a bush in my bunk, like outside, got rained on, had to eat horrible things. That's fine, can manage it. Like, it was great.
How nice is it that these little realizations...
Yeah. Just to go, oh, it's not something I have to endure. It's an opportunity. This is an opportunity in a different way. And yeah, just like if it never went to air, I got my money's worth out of it just from the experience that I had being there.
I love your mindset. That's amazing. Ed, how do you feel about, and I know you're very modest, but you can be arrogant, I'm giving you permission. How do you feel about being a celebrity?
I hate the term celebrity. I hate it because celebrity, I mean, how ironic. The celebrity to me says you're not necessarily known for skill. So I don't view myself as a celebrity. I'm a comedian.
Okay.
And I would also say, yeah, and celebrity, yeah, like a Kardashian is a celebrity.
Yeah.
Like, obviously astute businesswoman, but I don't know what positive,
skills,
I'm a comedian. That's my work. That's my job. And that's why people might know me. And I don't consider myself to be a household name by any stretch of the imagination.
You are.
If you like comedy, you know who I am, maybe.
In
you
Australia,
probably think I'm Fiona O'Loughlin, though.
Oh, do you
I get that all the time.
If I was to do a survey of like people naming top comedians and did a list of top 10, you would be in that, like, from every single person.
Well, that is very lovely of you to say.
Thank you, but it's true. Last three, next big dream or goal, but you may have answered this.
Yeah, I've got a TV. I've got to just write a TV pitch. That's what I've got to do.
Okay, you heard it here first. It's going to be out soon. Any advice you want to give to people who want to try something different or new, but perhaps a bit fearful of doing so?
Just do it. Just say yes to it. Like, obviously give yourself, like, don't quit your day job immediately, but you're never too old to do something new, and the joy that you will get from trying it and succeeding, especially if you're no good at it for a start. It's really hard as an adult. We're not used to learning new stuff that we've never done before. Like, normally by the time you're an adult, you're like, well, I can play basketball, or I can play snooker, or whatever you do. But learning a new skill as an adult and having to be shit at it for a start is really great for you.
It's exciting. And you said something to me when you came in that fear gives you wings.
Yeah, so that's in terms of writing a show. So we were talking about how this is the worst time of year for comedians because it's pre-festival. We're all worried about what our material is going to be. And for me, I need a deadline to really do my best work. And also, when you walk on stage, the idea that there's not going to be something funny to say is so awful that fear gives you wings to come up with the joke.
Yep.
So that's like, forget Red Bull, fear gives you wings. Like you need the
They'll sponsor you soon.
Yeah, you need the pressure. I need the pressure of a deadline, preferably imposed by someone else, that to make the diamond, to crush the carbon.
Becky Lucas, I'm sure you know her. She has a great analogy around that in her book as well. Last question. If you could go back into a time when you first started out, what advice would you give yourself and why?
Don't take being the only woman in the room as a compliment.
Very profound. Last question before I
let me answer that again. Let me give you a second answer to that. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. Like if you die on stage, it doesn't matter. Like I'm not a surgeon. If I have a shit day at work, I don't kill someone. Yeah. Like the only person that might die is me on stage. But, if you have a bad gig, ultimately that's 15 minutes out of your life that you didn't enjoy.
Okay.
But yeah, it doesn't just like I guess it's that freedom to fail. I wish that's something that I had learnt well and earlier.
Very nice. And last question before I ask how people can follow you, keep up to date with you and check out your shows. What is the one question I should have asked you?
Are you getting a new cat after this, Cal?
And are you?
Yes.
Awesome. Anything else? Anything you want to tie up or?
Just that, try it. If you are thinking you'd like to try stand up, just do it. Try it. There's lots of open mic rooms around. Just give it a go. And also, I'm one of the hosts of The Moth, which is a storytelling night and also an amazing podcast in Melbourne. And if you want to if you don't feel like you want to do stand up, it's a storytelling night. And I know there are other storytelling nights, but it's some of the most magical stories get told.
So how do people do that?
Follow The Moth in Melbourne on their Facebook page. And if you look up themoth.org, it's got information about all the different live shows. So the way the night runs is there's a theme for the night. So it might be like Love Hurts. Then if you want to tell a story, put your name in the hat, and 10 people get their names drawn out of the hat. So you might put your name in and never get called up, but there'll be 10 true stories told on that topic by the people they happen to. And it's the best.
That is very cool. I'll put the links in the episode notes so people can check it out. And what about you? How can people follow you and your shows?
So you can find me on TikTok and Instagram under Cal Wilson or Calbo Wilson, CALBO Wilson. Yep. On Twitter, don't visit much. What's the point? And you can find me on the Token Artists website, and there'll be linked to all my ticket sales on my Instagram.
And you also have a website. Does that have your shows as well?
It does, I think, but mainly the best way is just to go to Instagram or TikTok, I would say.
So I'll upload all of that in the episode notes below so people can check it out. Thank you so much. You are amazing. I love this abundance and growth mindset. It's very rare and very contagious. So
it's really lovely to be reminded of it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
I love Cal's take that life will go on and how success is not the end point. She stresses that we must keep going forward. In simple terms, Cal is explaining that life doesn't end when we achieve something, and as she says, life is not a static point. You don't get the credits and the fade out. You still live through the rest of our life. Cal expresses that obviously we want to thrive and succeed in our goals, but it is also important to acknowledge the small moments in our lives. Life is a marathon and not a short sprint. My takeaway is enjoy the little moments. Let's not beat ourselves up when something doesn't go to plan, and let's try and go with the flow. So I'll leave you with this epic quote by Sherry Carter Scott. Success is a process that never ends.
Thank you for listening to the Funny and Failure podcast, exploring the deeper side of comedy.